Of course, in my working career, I was a salesman. And so when I walked in the person's office, I had to be absolutely convinced that what I had, first of all, was good for them. And that in time, they would agree with me. And then that's the way I approached the Community Foundation.
Earle Wootton, I can't tell you how excited I am to sit down with you today. And we're sitting in the Community Foundation building. We're in Montrose, Pennsylvania, small rural town, small Northeast PA. And yet this foundation went from, in 15 or so years, went from $500,000 to somewhere around $20 million of endowments and monies that it helps manage for this community. And as I thought about this interview today, I thought, how can we explain that? And of course, I'm on the board, so I've been a part of it. But I thought to myself, one of the questions I want to ask Earle is, how does it do that? How does it grow from so little at inception to so prominent today? And I know your answer is going to be, it's the people around me, it's the community. And I don't disagree with that, but I would push back because I think that I'm looking at a big part, a big reason for the success of the foundation. I know you well enough to know you'll be humble about that. But you have taken step by step by step with this foundation. And I wanted to ask you, we're going to talk about the foundation here as we get into some things, but what is it about you as a person that is able to find opportunity when most people see a shut door? Or they see a closed opportunity or no opportunity, and you'll think about things and you'll come back and you'll say, I have an idea. And you've done that to me, and I know other board members and other people in the area, and you find ways of. Is that programmed in your DNA, or is that something you learned over the years?
I think it's part of my DNA. I think that the way I approach problems is to, of course, look for a solution. But I think many organizations, and especially nonprofits, take the attitude of, well, I can only do so much. And there's a standard way that people do these things. So I want to make sure that I'm following that standard procedure. We didn't do that. When we started out, we were told that we started as an affiliate of the Williamsport-Lycoming Foundation. And within a relatively short period of time, they began to question the relationship because we weren't following the tried and true, straight and narrow. I wanted to have an executive director. And they discouraged it. They said, oh, it's not necessary. We can send someone up from Williamsport, which clearly wasn't working. I also wanted to have a headquarters. And they said, no, that isn't necessary either. It's too much expense and people would misunderstand building a really nice home for the Community Foundation. So we followed a different path. We established school district foundations. We were willing to expand into Wyoming County when we were asked to by the folks that live in Wyoming County. We expanded after that into the rest of the Endless Mountains. And then more recently, we were asked by the Pennsylvania Bankers Association to work with all of their member banks. And so now we're working statewide. And this means that we now have a level of activity that does, without any question, support our staff, support the overhead that we have. We've been able to operate for the past several years with a surplus each year, which have allowed us to build up some reserves for a rainy day. Even though this year, it's raining. This has been a tough year.
Yeah, it has. For every charity.
Sure. And we don't know if that's over yet or not, because people's attitude toward establishing funds at the community foundation is a learning process, and it's quite different than giving to most of our local charities. I know that you work with your clients to very carefully plan that they can have enough money to live on and that they can have enough money to retire on. But it strikes me as a bit unusual that very little thought is given to planning their charity giving after they're dead or as they're able to while they're alive. Very little thought is given to that. They say, well, you give the money to the charity, which means that this money that they very carefully accumulated over the years, they're turning over to someone that they frankly don't know.
Right.
And also, a local charity isn't equipped to handle a large amount of money. They certainly, every one of them will say, that's no problem, we'll take care of it. But we could name many instances of mismanagement where people have thought that the money they had should be placed in a checking account so they would know exactly how much they have all the time.
Right.
I've been told that verbatim. What a terrible, wasted opportunity. And so as we were looking for ways that the foundation could grow, we knew that we could work with school districts. We knew that we could work with corporations. We knew that we could work with tax credit programs that are not well understood by most of the community, and we could help them to understand how to make charitable giving more efficient, more effective. With families, we try to explain how decisions that they make now can be continued perpetually into the future. If they want to give money to their church, that money can be given every year, literally forever. And we have the ability to have enough flexibility as an organization to adjust for changes in the requirements of the community and of their beneficiaries. If their church merges with another church, we can accommodate that in the arrangement. So we have built families and individuals, school districts, other nonprofits, and corporations into our client base, if you will.
When I first joined the board of this foundation, I didn't feel like I had much to offer, although you felt I did, which I really appreciated, that what you saw in me that I couldn't see. And one of the things I had was the sort of the sweat equity, and I'd be willing to do some evening appointments and go do the elbow grease, whatever it took to make things work. And one of the things that we set out on was to look at all the school districts in our area that were willing to have us help them and take their sort of very fragmented, very antiquated scholarships and endowments that were kind of out there in all the different places and consolidate them, organize them, and save the stories that were behind those endowments and scholarships that sort of got lost, right? I know you talk about, I think it's the Wood ambulance. You want to tell that story?
Yes.
I think that's a great story that folks should hear, how that story got lost, and we kind of rekindled that.
I think it demonstrates one of the important functions of a community foundation. We were approached by the Montrose High School, a number of years ago, to take over a scholarship. They had been notified by a bank that had a trust that was for a scholarship, the Robert Wood Scholarship. The bank said it's too small for us to continue managing. We want to turn it over to the school district. The school district asked us if we could take it because they understood that managing a scholarship is outside of the things that they want to be involved with.
Sure. Yeah, school districts have enough on their hands these days.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so what happened was the scholarship came to us, but as it did, the man at the school said, Bob Wood Scholarship. He said, Bob Wood, he's a fellow that I think he lived in New York City and made money there and set up this scholarship. And when I heard that, I thought, what a shame. Because I knew Bob Wood. At the end of the Korean War, Bob Wood, who'd been a medic in the Army, came to Montrose and he bought a panel truck, painted it white, painted a red cross on the side of it, and began Montrose Ambulance. He worked at that for the rest of his life. Starting up an organization like that, I'm very sure he never made much money himself. He was lucky if he could keep the organization running on donations. When he died, a bunch of local businessmen wanted to honor what he had done. So they took up a contribution and started the Robert Wood Scholarship. But it had been placed in a trust at a bank. The bank does not really care about the story behind the trust. That isn't what they do. And so it had been lost. One of the pages on our website tells the story of the Robert Wood Scholarship. His family still lives locally. I think that it is what Bob Wood would have wanted. I think it's also what the people that donated to his scholarship fund would have wanted.
I can remember one time when my partner at Stonehouse, we were in our office working and you stopped down. We had a conversation and some things transpired over the next 24 or 48 hours. And from a financial perspective, based on what you and I talked about, I thought, with the stock market and things, and I thought, wow, I know Earle must be banged up and it must be experiencing some tough times here based on what we talked about just a day or two ago. And you came in my office to have a conversation, and I thought, oh man, he's going to be really bummed out, very disappointed, and the opposite, a complete different conversation took place than what I expected. And you came in super cool, collected. Yeah, hey, I regret that, but this is this. And you said, I have a couple ideas I'd like to bounce off you. And I'm thinking of this, and I'm thinking of this. And they were all very optimistic, very let's go get them attitudes. Mm-hmm. And I remember when you walked back out to your car and went back home, I remember looking at Scott and saying, that guy is exceptional. There's something about going back to your DNA, and I've always admired it. I don't know what it is, but I've tried to acquire it to be able to weather those storms. And I think I've learned that over time. Maybe it's experience, but I have seen you do that around this board table and in other things in your life that I know of, that when times get tough or you get stuck in a corner, you don't just curl up in a ball. You put your mind to it, you put your effort to it, and you work your way through it. I'm going to ask you that DNA question. I mean, right. I think there's been times in your life, I know that there's a couple that I've seen, but there's probably been many times in your life. And I'm just curious, where do you find that strength to get through that?
Oh, Bob, I think I'm an optimist. And also I was brought up to believe that if something isn't working, whether it's your job or your investments or whatever, that you should find a way to make it work. That this may sound harsh, but it's my fault. If my investments aren't working, it's my fault. Either I'm not paying attention, I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not working smart enough. That last one is a tough one sometimes to get your arms around. Working smart enough. What does that mean? But for the community foundation, working smart enough means, as you have already said, not accepting the day-to-day. We'll wait for people to bring in a check, and if they don't, well, I guess we don't have anything to do. I've certainly talked to lots of people that this idea didn't seem to make sense to them. I think the idea makes perfect sense. I think the problem is in my explanation. and so I go back to them until they won't see me anymore. Yeah. That's fine. Of course, in my working career, I was a salesman. And so when I walked in the person's office, I had to be absolutely convinced that what I had, first of all, was good for them. And that in time, they would agree with me. And then that's the way I approach the community foundation. This organization is not run like a nonprofit. It's run like a regular for-profit organization. I believe the people that work here should be paid as much as they would be paid for doing the similar job at a for-profit organization. We have far fewer people than an organization of this size should have. And I think it would be fair to say that they're paid better than they might be paid at a typical nonprofit. Paying for results is part of what I believe in. One of the things that's very difficult for me to do, but it's also essential, is recognizing when things won't work, because those times do come. I think the example that I could think about is that I was in the printing business, and the technology of printing was changing. I was working for IBM. I worked for them for over 30 years doing their technical publications. But when we all recognized that it was better for them to put their publications on the internet than have me print hard copies that they distribute, there really wasn't an argument against it. They were right. That's a better way to go. And that's why I'm not in the printing business. But as those days came to a close, it was a challenge for me to think about people that won't be working for me anymore and possibly might not have jobs. How I should have thought of something smarter, or how I could have worked harder. But in reality, I think that the writing was on the wall. Technology had changed. My company was not alone. I know very few printing companies that do the traditional technical publication work that are still in business. So I think the right decision was made. And when that decision was made, it then allowed me to do things like work in financial services, which I did for 10 years. That brought me an understanding that when I came to the Community Foundation, I was prepared to do things in perhaps some different manners.
Well, I know, again, going back to the financial planning background that we do at Stonehouse, I know a lot of clients that are reluctant to get wills.
Sure.
And do their wills, yet they have assets and they have children to protect. But yet it's just the idea of, if I sit down to do a will, I'm admitting that I'm going to die someday.
I think that's a real problem.
And I'm guilty of it as well. I don't like to even think about that. But I have to say, when you sit down and you look at what you can do to donate money on an annual basis, still give to the United Ways and the Red Crosses and to the churches or whatever, and then also incorporate all the opportunities that are here within a foundation. Not just this foundation. I like to think this is an exceptional one, because I think we have a large breadth of opportunities for people to choose from and look at, but you can get so creative. It can actually make charity fun, as opposed to more of a headache or a stress.
It can not only be fun, I think it can be a great learning experience. We have one family who created a fund that it's not really huge, although it's a nice amount of money. Maybe $30,000, something like that. And so they have not a lot of money to give away, but they have some money to give away. And they come to the foundation with their kids. And their kids sit around this table. The father sits at the end of the table and says, "Now we have $1,500 to give away. I want each of you to tell me what we should do with it and why." And occasionally, it'll be, "Well, we ought to get some cookies." But that's his opportunity to then talk about, well, what is this that we're doing, and why is it important? And this family is doing this as a process of building, because they will have substantial money someday. And as they get college tuition paid for, and as they help their kids get a start in life, then they'll have extra money which will come in, but this process will continue. And if the kids move away, Zoom is now readily accepted, and we'll use it.
It's crazy.
And it is crazy, but but we become the glue that ties it together.
My last question to you, sort of asking you to summarize this, talking about our deaths. We both probably hate to admit that, right? And I won't put a number on it, but at some point you're gone.
At some point.
Let's say you're somewhere else looking down at the foundation. What does it look like from where it is today? What do you want to get it to where you say, I'm done now. I did what I needed to do. Or are you there now?
By my very makeup, I'm not there now.
That answer shocks me.
Yeah, I can't. I don't have an option about that. That's just the DNA problem.
It's a good thing.
And I'm not sure that the foundation should ever say, this is it. We don't want to do anymore. There's clearly a tendency in nonprofits to reach that point.
I'm actually asking, when are you satisfied?
When am I satisfied?
When are you satisfied that you say, I've done all I can do? This is because you've put so many things in place now. If something happened to you tomorrow, this thing continues to tick. I'm not saying there won't be a void and a sadness, obviously, but you've done that part. But are you just going to work and continue to build this thing as long as you're capable, or are you ready to hand off? Is there a board topic that I don't know that's coming in June or something?
Well, Christine, as you know, is our CEO.
Right.
We have strength that we are continuing to build. We recently hired a gal who is a paralegal. She strengthens our team immensely. We have a gal who was CEO of another nonprofit who strengthens our bench a lot. Jerry Golis is a full-time IT guy, also a big strength. I feel comfortable that the organization can run without me. So I can go on and create more value by being this executive without a portfolio. I'm not expected to do anything, so anything I do is plus business. Mm-hmm. If I'm able to develop something where we're working with real estate for our donors, well, that might be cool. We are working with colleges, seeing if we can take over their foundation, run the college foundation. We have one that has said yes. It's part of the state system. If one says yes, well, then it would be nice to run it across the entire state system.
That's right. Why stop there?
Well, the state, in its wisdom, has made many, many regulations very important to follow as you do your running of a college foundation. We have a great deal more flexibility. Donors don't like to be told, bring your ideas in triplicate and make sure that they've been notarized, and then maybe we can begin to talk.
Right.
We're easy. They like it. They have an idea of what they want to do. So we want to develop that. And there's a list that we could spend the rest of the morning talking about. Some of them I'll take a look at. Some of them Christine will work on by herself. Some of them we work together on. I think that they all can develop. I don't have a target. I don't know how far we're going to go. It really isn't. The goal is not where we are going. The goal is that we are going.
That's what I wanted to hear. I like that answer because I'm part of that answer. I'm part of that solution. And as a board member that's been here, I have no idea, 15 years?
Yes, all of that.
Something like that. To me, that's music to my ears.
That's what we're going to do.